your Michigan inventors have a product that was inspired by a real life situation. Tell me about it.
My son William was born 6 weeks early and spent some time in neonatal intensive care. And he was born with multiple diagnoses, and we were told he'd be there a long time. We weren't sure if he was going to live or not. And he ended up coming home and doing very well. And the one thing that he came home with was a feeding tube that went down his nose and into his stomach that was taped to his face to keep it in place. And we would put his baby formula through it every time he had to eat.
And so as she became more critical, she became weaker, and she started having multiple stays in the hospital. And on our first, where she was rushed by ambulance and admitted, is when she received her feeding tube. And we had to learn as parents how to properly care for that. And one of that is to replace it and reinsert it before you can go home. That's required. And when she got released from the hospital, there was that moment of, what are we supposed to do with this loose end that's hanging from her? And all they had for us was, you can tape it to her, or here's a safety pin. Well, neither was effective, and we left, and we quickly learned why. They had taught us how to reinsert the tube because it regularly was snagged and pulled, and we had to do that. And it was already horrible watching our daughter have that tube, but then to be, as parents, have to restrain our daughter.
It's tough. And I can tell you were probably, when you received your first Tubie pocket, it was a godsend.
It was.
We finally got to a point where we had to put the tube in every single feed, and it was so uncomfortable when he was getting bloody noses, and it was horrible. And I told my husband, we have to do something because this is hurting him, and I can't stand to see it. And so I sat down at my sewing machine and came up with a few different ideas, and finally landed on our very first Tubie pocket. And we attached it to his shirt, and we coiled the other end of the tube up in it, and he didn't touch it for 2 days, and it was just the most amazing thing.
It basically, out of necessity, it gave us, like I said, freedom, where we could go to family functions and take her to the zoo with our other kids. Sorry, gosh. But,
we said we'd do this.
But it really lessened the concern that I started having. It made it less medical. When she was sleeping, I could have it secured and not worry as much about her choking.
Mm-hmm. What is your goal for your business?
We just really want to reach all of these patients of all ages and all backgrounds who are dealing with these feeding tubes by giving them a better quality of life.
How does your product work?
It's very simple, but it has a couple really important components that make it distinctive. So our pocket is about 3 inches squared, and it holds the end that we mentioned that dangles from the person's skin, the rest of the feeding tube, once it's coiled up. The pocket, when you open it, you'll notice 2 important features. One, there's an internal safety pin. The other really important feature of this pocket are the jam cleats on either side. That is this V shape. And what those do is, when the tube is in the pocket and it's closed, those pinch the tube so that it doesn't slide too far. But alternately, that's also important, they give a little. This is a typical feeding tube that someone would use. You just coil it up and put it in and seal it shut, and it will be attached to the person's clothing. And one of the nice features of these also is they lay very flat with our design, so little kids don't notice them as much.
I know that you guys talked about providing for your kids that are not going to be able to be out on their own. What is the one thing about this that you went, oh, this is good?
Well, when it meets the need that you so desperately couldn't find another solution for, and now to know that that could be for some others as well. Mm-hmm. So it's been exciting to be on this journey with Becca, and to help so many families, that someday this may not just be for the pocket of those in their home, but at the hospitals, because daily around the world there are infants and children and adults receiving a feeding tube on a daily basis.